collapsed, and if Rome was never emphasized as a religious superpower, um, you wouldn't have had a Protestant Reformation with Byzantium. It may have been more of a Christian Muslim thing all over Europe, as opposed to Christian versus Christian.
Yeah.
Or Babylonian Christian to non-Babylonian Christian.
Yeah.
Specifying the astro-theological Christianity versus the scriptural Christianity, which is, in my opinion, the primary divide of the Reformation and Protestantism. Now, Protestantism went from Germany into France. France resisted, Spain resisted, but Britain did not resist. Britain embraced it. So during the reign of the Tudors and all that stuff, all that was going on with that, it led to all these imperiums because it decentralized Rome. And it led to the expanse of going west to try to circumvent the Spice Road. To avoid Rome, to avoid Byzantium, that's what they did. But in this particular instance, if you had something where they controlled the Middle East, they controlled the Spice Road, they controlled the global religion, who's to say where their set of religious power would have been? It probably would have been in Constantinople, but they may have moved around and done a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And with Europe as the battlefield, as opposed to Africa or the Middle East. So Rome de-emphasized as a superpower. Rome de-emphasized as a religious superpower in the medieval world. What sort of countries would France and Italy be?
They would be under the umbrella of Austrian, Russian,
and the
Byzantine
and the religions thereof.
Yeah.
This is Spiritus Holographica on the Joseph Vivaldi Network. I'm Ricky Berhart here, and we're here to talk about the parallel brands of the Olkanos Network. The Olkanos Network has several channels, audiobooks, poetry, spoken word, paranormal investigation, and talk. The Olkanos Network, a creative baptism for every day. Check us out on Spreaker.com.
I'm here to plug a book and a Kindle book and an audio book from Joseph Vivaldi, and it is The Evolution, Square Circle, the production of professional wrestling. It is about the production from black and white TV all the way to streaming on the WWE Network and other streaming sites of wrestling. And it has interesting storylines too. Check it out. It's available on Kindle, Audible, and iTunes.
So we've been talking on Spiritus Holographica today about 2 points: destruction by fire and the resulting information vacuum or dark age that's imposed. And then, of course, there's the overall failure that war represents when one side loses and history is diametrically shifted. So in Wolfman's hologram today, he went over, what if Napoleon lost, not at Waterloo, but never became, led the French Empire to an annihilation where they did not even claim the victories against the Austro-Hungarian Empire and various other targets in Europe, and instead were crushed into devastation, so that the Austro-Hungarian Empire not only remained integral, but went on for centuries to lead. And it turned Europe basically into a threshing floor where the European powers never came to be. Now that creates not only an informational vacuum, but a power vacuum. And we're imagining that out of this holographic Austro-Hungarian Empire that was never defeated, that one rose out of there to decentralize the power of said empire, because we're waging it where Germany, part of Germany, whatever survived of Germania, Russia, Tsarist Russia, uninterrupted by the Bolsheviks, and an intact Austro-Hungarian Empire representing the Byzantine faith that was the superpower. As opposed to Europe, we shifted over, and Europe itself just never manages to get going. Well, with no Frankish Empire, with no full-on German Empire, there would be no British Empire. But moreover, there would never have been the same Renaissance as we knew it.
No, that would mean if there is not the same Renaissance, there would be a different kind of Renaissance.
We're theorizing that that's the case, but the thing we know about the Gutenberg press, the Reformation, the Counter-Reformation, and all the competition, the decentralizing of what we call Roman power, we're projecting that onto this Byzantine Empire that the Austro-Hungarian victory, the crushing of Napoleon, would have represented. So someone out of that imperium would have done a similar thing, we're thinking. It may not have been Christian versus Christian. It may have been an Islamic versus Christian or a Judeo versus Christian. But the point is we would have a whole other circumstance for not only a reformation of faith, but a renaissance of culture, which is the whole basis that we move on. Now, a renaissance or reformation is a reclaiming of power from a centralized authority, whereas when I talk about holographic fire, I'm talking about an annihilation of data, an annihilation of network, and a centralizing of something. So when these great destroyers like Alexander or Julius Caesar come to the ancient libraries of the world and they annihilate those books, and the subsequent caliphs who burned those scrolls for their bathhouses to further the annihilation of those libraries, specifically the one at Alexandria in that. And then you have a future where you have all these great things, but they're owned by different people. So then either A, a meteor strikes, a solar flare hits the Earth, or a computer virus ravishes our computer systems. This is in the future. Because inevitably all reformations and renaissances lead to the acquisition of the scientific method into supremacy to bring on an industrial revolution.
See, we would think that if there was an industrial revolution, it might have been started by the Austrian Empire.
And in that parallel world, the Austrian colonies of America, the Austro-Hungarian Empire or the Byzantine Empire's colonies, again, a lot of people would have said, well, we're worried about the clerics of Byzantium instead of saying the Pope, you know, I'm not a papist. Well, perhaps they'd be anti-clerical of Byzantine, the anti-Byzantine clerical. In other words, what reformation would have arisen from such a centralized power instead of Martin Luther? And then, like we said, what industrial revolution would have arisen from such centralized information that was networked?
See, I have another thing that I'm going to ask. Now, we're focusing on Europe. What would China and Japan do around this time? And, you know, Japan is technologically sound, if we know that, and then they're a little ahead on the times with
we went over the alternate holograms from China if they had never abandoned their naval superior fleet in the 1600s. So we're kind of going back to that again. No British Empire means no Opium War. No Opium War means a total different relationship. Because again, it wouldn't have been a British Empire oppressing China. It wouldn't have been them doing what they did. The question is do we think that the Byzantine, meaning both the Orthodox Christian and the Islamic world, do you think they would have did such a thing to Asia? Because it was the result of Asia's isolationism, and then when the British Empire came with their ships and occupied their ports and blockaded their ports and restricted the freedom of their waterways, it turned into, for a long time, it turned into a problem, and it made it seem like isolationism was a good idea. But if they had maintained their connections if they hadn't destroyed their fleet and they maintained their connection with their Muslim trade in East Africa, you could be dealing with a massive powerhouse that reached from the Mediterranean Sea, the Atlantic Sea, all the way through the Indian Ocean to the Pacific. And it would have represented, many continents.
Yeah.
India, Asia, Europa, Africa.
Wow.
You could be looking at a completely different civilization.
Yeah.
All over. Because you wouldn't have had the conquistadors. So what sort of imperial reach would there have been into the Americas to begin with, when they already have the mass resources that they have? It's almost like, the way it worked out, the world was so fragmented that everybody was just struggling with each other, but we kind of have this thing where they're united. Now, say in this hologram, and this is just a hologram.
This is just a hologram, folks.
Now, say in this hologram, there was an event, like a large meteorite that hit the Indian Ocean. And that meteorite served to annihilate a certain segment of the population. So now you have because there were many missionaries that went into the East, like the Philippines and Vietnam and China, and they brought both Christianity and Islam into those places. So now what if your Orthodoxy and your counter-Orthodoxy pivoted? Like, what if Byzantium was the Western Roman Empire?
Oh, wow.
And they set up another capital in China. What if Hong Kong was the Constantinople of this hologram? So that Asia itself represented the Eastern Orthodoxy of Christianity and Islam. So you have a whole different portion of culture that may have arisen from that. And the annihilation from the asteroid may have resulted in a vacuum where the Eastern Orthodoxy ends up rising in supremacy. So now Christianity's center was in Asia. And it would have evolved in with Buddhism, with Hinduism, and it would have absorbed different tendencies of that faith. So you're talking about a real intermix of not just culture, but information. Because how does the class system that formerly belonged to Europe mesh with the Hindu caste system?
So, hypothetically,
yes,
this is hologram reality.
This is Spiritus Holographica, after all.
Spiritus Holographica, after all. What does that do with Islam of the time?
Well, it makes us have to consider the imposition of Sharia law into all things. People will talk about the Inquisition. They'll talk about Catholic dogma. And we're not trying to be controversial to any system. We're presenting holograms, which are theoretical past, present, futures, like alternate Earths, alternate continuums. So there's no reason to get bent out of shape, but imagine something like Sharia law I mean, saying, well,